A lot of the times, as human beings, we have a tendency to want to separate things, to compartmentalize, put things in neat little boxes. And while this is an extremely useful thing to be able to do, to put labels on things and to separate them and categorize them, and that is completely valid, and as we should do those things to have a better understanding of them, their place, and be able to organize our thoughts, organize the way that we perceive things. At the same time, we things are much more connected than maybe meets the eye, or maybe that we've been led to believe. And in this video, I'm going to discuss why we cannot separate these aspects of ourselves. And if you are familiar with Kabbalistic teachings, or you're familiar with Hermetic teachings, or even Buddhist or Vedic teachings, like spiritual teachings from ancient India, or if you're not, regardless, you may have heard of different planes of existence, right? There's also the chakras, there's 7 chakras, right? And there are, at the same time as you can separate these things, they're also fundamentally connected, right? Going up that chakra system, if one is out of balance, it's going to throw off the others. We are a system which is the sum of its parts. We're also the more than the sum of its parts, but it's kind of like in a machine. If one thing's out of whack, it's going to affect the rest of the machine, right? The rest of the machine is going to stop working properly. And what we're going to discuss today is this Trinity. And for the purpose of our discussion, we're going to keep it as a Trinity. Other people could refer to this as a quadrinity, meaning that there's 4 components. But let's list them out. So first, we have the physical. We are physical beings. We are living a physical experience. And I've talked about this in a lot of videos because it is something that in a lot of the manifestation community, people want to ignore this. They want to ignore this fact that we are physical beings. They want to just completely only live in this kind of mental, emotional plane, right? And that's what we're going to get to next. So we are physical, right? Then we have the emotional. We are also emotional. That is the next part of this Trinity. And then on top of that, we have the mental. Okay, these things work in harmony and they work together. But if one of them is not working properly, it's also going to affect the others, right? Now, the 4th one that I mentioned earlier, that is the spiritual, and that is, you could also, as far as the chakras go, that could be linked or looked at as being akin to the crown chakra, which connects us to the divine, that is connecting us to the source energy, the infinite intelligence of all that is. But again, for the purpose of this discussion, I'm going to mainly stick with these 3 because that is the foundational trinity of these 3 is what is going to, again, inform and even have us have any ability to reach that 4th one. So the foundational experience of having all 3 working properly and in order is going to be of utmost importance. And as I'm speaking about this all ties into your ability to manifest your life, to manifest the reality of your choosing, to be, again, these 3 components are components of the self, right? And as you know from studying manifestation, the external reality is going to reflect you, your self-concept, your identity, the way that you are showing up. And so if any one of these 3 components is out of alignment, you're not going to be able to have as much creative power. It's going to drastically reduce your creative ability to manifest in your life. And people always, again, in this community, people want to just purely live in this mental, emotional landscape where they think, if I just feel this, if I just visualize this, if I just say this, then I can get my desire. And again, yeah, I'm not here to say that that can never happen. It does happen. And obviously, certain people, you hear certain success stories, and certain people are able to get some types of results with that. But the real power that you're going to get from this, and again, if you look at anybody that is able to sustain, maintain amazing results in their life, it's not like they're ignoring the physical component. They're still doing the work. They're still showing up to record a video. They're still showing up to write that book that they're working on. If they are a world class at anything, whether it's athletics, whether they are a world class violinist, whether they are a world class teacher, somebody like Tony Robbins, these people all show up and they perform the activity in the physical world as well. Kobe Bryant goes and performs, I'll rest in peace. He would go and train and perform the activity, okay? And anybody that's getting results in their life is operating in all three of these realms, okay? So let's go into some descriptions of these different planes. So as you can probably tell, the physical plane of existence is pretty explanatory, right? It's our physical bodies. It is our skin, brains, organs. It's our physical body. Now, I'm going to share with you some things that we should feel when we are in balance with our physical form. We should feel open, flexible, healthy. Our vitamins, minerals, they should be balanced, free of pain, toxicity, and acidity in the body. And that is also why I'm a big proponent of paying attention to what you eat, paying attention to your lifestyle, paying attention to going to the gym, or embracing a practice of movement. And in general self-development, this is a well-known fact. For whatever reason, in the manifesting community, people want to ignore this component completely. But the fact remains that if you are consistently intaking, and I talked with Lucy about this, Life by Lucy, we had an interview, and she's talking about your gut health and what you're eating. And if you're eating carbs, if you're eating a lot of processed foods, you're going to be cut off from your energy levels. Are going to be low. You're going to be cut off from your mental body, and your entire nervous system is going to be dysregulated, and you're going to be creating an ascetic environment in which your nervous system is going to be out of whack. The blood alkaline level, like all of these things. Okay, I'm not like a scientist, but I can just tell you that I've done a lot of research. I've understood what I need to know. I'm not going to give you all the technical details, but what it comes down to is that it's essentially like the most basic metaphor you could give is like in your car, you're putting in like canola oil in your car, right? Your car needs to run on gasoline. And if you're putting in the wrong fuel, the entire machinery is going to be operating at a very subpar level. And in the case of a car, it's going to completely break down. And your body may very well completely break down too after enough of this abuse of taking in the wrong forms of energy, forms of nutrients. And a lot of the time there is no nutrients. There's no nutritional value in a lot of this food that we have. And you can see it. I mean, you can see in the United States that 1 in 3 people now are like obese, and everybody's becoming diabetic, and everyone's becoming having all kinds of problems. Health problems are developing, heart problems, more and more neurological problems. I mean, what we're getting at is that this is a very root thing. It's like a low-hanging fruit. You can begin to eat more foods that are more beneficial to you and your entire experience. And as we go up this ladder here, you're going to see that everything starts to work better. So going up next, we have the emotional plane. So the emotional plane, when you have a healthy and balanced when you are healthy and balanced on the emotional plane, you should be inclusive, empathetic, open, honest, less or non-judgmental towards others, and generous with help. There's a desire to give without expecting or wishing to receive something in return, cortisol, which is hormones of stress, insulin, estrogen, progesterone, testosterone, will be more balanced and even. Blood sugar is more regulated, and the heart beats even and slow, and blood pressure is balanced. The body does not retain water, nor is the body over dehydrated. So, the quality of someone who is underbalanced in their emotional, and actually we could just say out of balance, because there's underbalance, then there's also let's just go with that term, out of balance. So a general lack of emotional intelligence, trust, and very little intuition or ability to read and understand people. There's also a lot of fear and neurosis, as well as concern for the self and less empathy for the experience of others. This can manifest physically as holding water in the limbs, joints, and face, especially from hormone imbalance, dehydration or bloating, inflexibility, and joint stiffness. Lack of sleep from emotional stress presents similar symptoms. Mentally, it manifests as self-doubt, projection, and this is interesting because this is touching on some things I talked about in my recent interview with Darren McGee about people with narcissism, that they have some of these things, projection, lack of empathy, all these things. Thinking others have a better life, which again causes us to lose sleep, increases physical symptoms of imbalance. Ultimately, it means we are not using the mental or physical body, either by talking ourselves down to a point of feeling rational, to a point of being rational, or using, I think, irrational, and using the lungs and breath to calm the heartbeat. Then, oversaturated, passive, then quickly aggressive, obsessive, irrational, extremely irritated, depressed, overly anxious, often with feelings of drowning or hopeless conclusion of relationships or situations. And again, this is interesting because you can categorize somebody as being either underbalanced in this department or any of these departments, or overbalanced. And I would again liken that to that kind of the attachment theory, the attachment style, being overly balanced would be that anxious attachment, and under would be the avoidant. But in any case, this can manifest as weight gain, even while dieting, too much water in the aura and system, where the body is behaving like a sponge. Alternately, if someone overfires their nervous system, one can dry out the emotional body, which also manifests as being underweight, dehydrated, or desiccated. Hormones are key to our health. The heart might feel heavy, and the menstrual cycle might be heavy as well. The throat may feel closed, which also adversely affects hormones. Okay, so getting into the mental plane. So if your mental plane is in balance, you will be proactive at problem solving, you'll have concise communication, innovations coming into fruition with clarity and ease, the ability to solve emotional or physical issues in a direct and supportive way. There's very little waste, nonsense, or going around in circles. Instead, a balanced mental body offers direction and points true north. And that is a direction which benefits everyone. So somebody that is creating a win-win situations. So if you are underbalanced, you will experience confusion, brain fog, ideas lost quickly, lethargy, lack of purpose, neuroses, a doubt, lack of work ethic, feelings of low self-esteem and low worth. Physically, it manifests as a lack of a menstrual period and little self-care. If you are overbalanced, you will be egocentric, excessively driven, sociopathic, narcissistic. There we go. Having little or no empathy, especially when it comes to work or success. In a less extreme way, it's doing too much or frequently being on overdrive. This manifests physically in headaches or jaw aches. So you can see that some of those things are overlapping, right? And some of those things they're going to affect the other. If you were underbalanced or overbalanced in any one of those, any of the three, you're going to notice a spillover effect into the other ones. Now, really quickly, I am going to cover the spiritual, because the spiritual, again, while the spiritual is maybe, this is a higher level thing that we're going to be talking about, it's still is a component, and it still will play into this. And especially if you are more if you do have a foundation, at least a balance in the other three, then this is something that you're going to want to pay attention to. If the other three are out of balance, then this is going to also be, there's no way you're going to tap into this plane, right? Because this is kind of higher level. So if the spiritual body is balanced, you will be calm, fearless, highly creative, and operating without limits. And that's what we want as people that are manifesting and creating our lives. Paired with the fortitude and support to create action from ideas. That's inspired action. That's aligned action. That's what we talk about in this community, right? Along with this comes the acknowledgement that there's a higher force guiding and protecting the project, and that there's something bigger at play than you. The spiritual body represents the synthesis and balance of the other three. And that's what I've been saying, is that what's representative by the spiritual is that the Trinity is working cohesively like a well-oiled machine. That's how you tap into this fourth one. It's very similar to the idea that we are greater than the sum of our parts, right? So the quality of somebody who is underbalanced in this spiritual, and like I said, because this is like a downstream effect, that means they're definitely out of balance with the other ones. So you're disconnected from the understanding that we are all one, and feeling or thinking that we can do things. And you are feeling or thinking we can do things on our own or alone. That we are not co-creating our existence. That we are victims of fate. Very interesting that this says this here, because I talk a lot about how, as people that are, on this path, on this journey, we have to realize that we are co-creating reality. And that's another thing that I think people get messed up in this community, is thinking, oh, I am the sole author of everyone around me. That idea, that dogmatic idea that everyone is you pushed out. And I think that's very unhealthy. It's a very unhealthy approach, because that's entering into the realm of solipsism, which says that nothing else exists. It's just me. And it's delusional to think that way. And you can feel free to have your own opinions on this, but that's what I believe, that's what I talk about, that's what I teach here. And as we can see from this definition here, there's a lot of spiritual teachings that kind of echo this sentiment, that we are co-creators. And yes, the way that we show up is going to have a profound impact on the external, but it does not mean that we are the end-all be-all of every single thing that everyone in our external reality is doing. That's just pure delusion to be thinking that. So we are victims. Now, I've mentioned this in previous videos, and if you look, there are graphs, and I won't be able to pull it up right now, but on the scale of consciousness, that victim and blame thinking is extremely, extremely low vibrational. And when you engage in that type of thinking, you can see, I can tell you guys right now, this is the lower ego self. And this is going down from the emotions of pride to anger, desire, fear, grief, apathy, guilt, and shame. And what you come to realize is that drama triangle they talk about often. Again, this flip-flopping that goes around that I've discussed with the anxious, the avoidant. So with the drama triangle, the dynamic is you have on one hand, you have a victim, and then you have a persecutor, and then you have the savior. And what happens a lot of the time is that people that live in the victim mentality will flip-flop back and forth between a victim and a persecutor. And you can see this happening on a large scale, and social media has made this very, very easy to witness these dynamics unfolding, that the people that are living in a victim mentality, a victim mindset, they're operating from these emotions. You can tell they're operating from fear, grief, anger, guilt, and shame, right? And then they are projecting onto other people, pointing the blame, which, as this lower chart of consciousness denotes here, you are below the self-empowerment spectrum, because the self-empowerment begins at 200, where it goes to courage, then it goes to neutrality, then it goes to willingness, then it goes to acceptance, and then inner light. Anything below that is in this victim slash abuser consciousness. And that is a consciousness that, like I said, it's been encouraged in our culture lately. And the irony of this is that it's actually disempowering you. And you can see it written here on this chart that it is literally below the self-empowerment area of emotions. And it's crazy because I feel like the amount of encouragement to live in this victim mentality, I'm not one to really engage in conspiracies and stuff, but I think that it's kind of crazy how much this gets perpetuated when you realize that by accepting this and by living into this victim state, you are completely giving away your own self-empowerment, your own ability to be self-empowered and to be a conscious creator of your reality. You're essentially giving away all your manifesting abilities by adopting this type of mentality, because you're saying it's all everybody else's fault. And it's one and the same, because you cannot. I had this note that I had taken here. Let me see if I can find it. As long as you have something to blame, whether it is a person or it is something, as long as you have a noun to blame, then you are a victim. And the vice versa is if you don't have anything to blame, if you are taking responsibility, then you are not a victim. It is the act of blaming that makes you a victim. But when you blame, you are inherently saying that I don't have the power to change this, because the blame is outside of myself. The blame is on the external. So when you come to realize that, it's very ironic that this has been, like I said, encouraged so much in our modern day culture. And it's really time to take your power back and begin to take a look at what you're doing. And that's where the teachings of Neville Goddard come in, right? Because your state is creating this. And if you're living in a victim state, you're going to get more of the same. You're going to get more and more evidence and more reasons, and you're going to flip-flop in between, and then you're going to justify being a persecutor then, because if you are a victim, then it's just in for you to then persecute those who have transgressed against you. And it keeps you in this lower vibrational energy. It's a very low vibrational energy, and you realize that you're not going to be able to create from those lower vibrations. When you realize that, that's when you can take your power back. So anyways, so the victims of, as we were going here before we got off on this, the quality of somebody who is underbalanced in their spiritual says that we are the victims of fate, or the healthcare system, or the government, or the media. And most often, or entirely, are dismissive of listening to the gut. This person generally separates from being an active or conscious member of community or society, and feels deserving and expectant of others' energy or time. And again, very interesting, because you see these ideas being perpetuated again on social media, and it's like you're cut off from your own connection to God or to source energy or to the unity, to the oneness with other living beings. Because when you are connected to this aspect of reality, you want to be a conscious member of society. You want to do right by other people. You want to live by the golden rule. But when you feel this disconnect with this, and you have that solipsistic point of view, that's when the narcissism, that's when the this idea of feeling deserving and expecting of others' energy or time. But then on the flip side of that, they also feel left out, like they've not been seen or heard. There's also a tendency to put high emphasis, and that's that flip-flopping again from the anxious and the avoidant, the victim and the persecutor. There's also the tendency to put high emphasis on how things look or how they appear, instead of focusing on transparency and honest, heartfelt communication. There's also a heavy focus and over-reliance on doing, controlling, and the grasping of an exterior reference or relationship. Now, the quality of someone who is overbalanced in the spiritual is that they have their head in the clouds. They're not turning ideas into reality. They have a false God complex. And again, I think that some of this resonates for people that get too into some of these spiritual teachings, some of these people on the Reddit subreddit or the subreddit, for example, the of the Neville sub, lack of unity between action and behavior. Again, they're not, like, their action and their what they're preaching or what they're saying isn't in alignment. A lack of connection to interpersonal responsibilities, relationships, physical health and wealth, respecting of other people's bodies, paying bills, debts. There is generally a feeling of entitlement and being overly deserving. And I think you could see examples of that within people that, they use this term woo woo, that are too out there, right? Like, their heads in the clouds, they're not grounded at all. And what you want is to have your head in the clouds. You do want to have your head in the clouds to a certain extent, or your head looking towards the sky, but you also want to have your feet firmly planted on the ground at the same time, so that you are grounded as well, so that you have the ability to see that larger vision, but you're also taking the practical steps to get there. So one of the things that I'm going to be doing in my upcoming community / my course is we're going to discuss how to allow all these 3 or 4 planes of existence to work in harmony with each other, so that we are stepping into our power, and we're not giving away our power, we're not rejecting our power by adopting some of these more limiting states of being and some of these limiting emotions that we've talked about on this sliding scale. And when we get out of that triangle, when we get out of that dynamic from going between a victim to a persecutor to then a savior, and we step into somebody who is in a self-empowered state, that's when we're going to be able to really start to see a lot of changes, and we're taking responsibility for ourselves and the way that we're showing up and the way that we're affecting the effect that we're having on others. We're really going to start to step up in our ability to create. And with that being said, I hope that this video has been useful. I hope that this video has shed some light on some things, kind of maybe made some things make sense, that maybe it's hopefully something clicked for you while listening to this. And with that being said, much love as always. Drop me with a like, hit me with a comment down below, let me know your thoughts, and hit me with a subscribe, and I will see you guys in the next video.